to this week's Mental Health Monday. Yay!
Yay.
Julie Jensen and I just had a whole conversation. She's our special guest today. So, welcome to Mental Health Monday. It didn't record, so we're starting all over.
That's okay. It was good practice.
This is exactly what real life is like.
Right.
Like,
You
we're
got to roll with it.
with the punches. We did our deep breathing. We got ready. She started giving us wonderful tips on back to school, which is why she's here to talk to us. And she was on fire. And here we are. We're going to start all over,
Nice. We're going to
which
do it again.
we're going to do
I
it again.
know. We talked about how chatting with my kids this morning and how they prepped me. My oldest gave me my 11-year-old gave me a squishy that I cannot lose because apparently it's a Neato and it's the
It's
best.
valuable. You
Um,
got the
this
little
is top notch.
coveted one.
And then our 5-year-old said, I need you to just take a lot of deep breaths. So
Segued us into our deep breathing.
perfect.
So we're going to start again, do some more breaths because we could all use more breaths. And I recommend this is the number one strategy I teach for every day regulating your nervous system. And as we go back to school, we have the jitters, we have anxiety, we have fears, we have worries. So this is a way to kind of ground those worries and anxiety into the present moment and breathe through that. So we're going to take 2 breaths with square breathing. The key to square breathing is we're going to take a big belly breath. We're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4 and a slow exhale out our mouths like we're cooling soup or cooling a cookie, which you can do with your kids. The key with breathing is it's for you to put your oxygen mask on first. And then guess what? The kids get the benefit because they start learning it on a healthy coping strategy. So let's do that together. We're going to do 2 deep breaths. We're going to put our feet on the floor to ground us into this present moment. And we're going to inhale through our nose. We're going to hold and then a slow exhale out our mouths. Let's do one more. Big deep inhale and slow exhale. Just kind of noticing the difference and slowing things down. Anxiety likes to speed us up, so we want to slow things down. And Julie, I'm so glad you're here with us. You are the First Lady of Noblesville. You
Yes, I
have a
am.
teaching background. Tell us a little bit about your background so everyone knows what you're bringing to the table today, because I love having the teacher's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I taught early childhood and 3rd grade. Then I switched over to instructional coaching, which has been really fun because I still get a lot of time in the classrooms, but I get to work with the teachers and collaborate with them about instructional best practices and kind of a lot of collaborative problem solving in terms of what can we do to make this experience better for both the students and the teachers. So that's kind of my area right now as I'm doing a lot of that instructional coaching. And then I still get my teacher itch from time to time because I still get to do a lot of modeling and teaching and things that way. So, yeah.
You bring such wisdom to the table
Well,
because
thank
I
you.
think talking from a teacher's perspective and also a parent, how old are your kids? Just so everyone has a perspective of you've got all different ages.
We do. So we have 15, 11, 9, and 5. So high school down to our youngest is starting kindergarten on Thursday. So
Oh, you got
a
a
big transition. Yes.
so these are big transitions for us as parents and for the kids.
Yeah.
So what are your strategies for each of those ages as your like the top strategies you would recommend just as a teacher to help parents and kids make that transition as smooth as possible?
Yeah. Number one is routine. I think, especially for our family, we thrive on routine. The predictability of kind of having that same routine in the morning of how we wake up and breakfast and those expectations of, I mean, we still have a lot of crazy mornings, but so that it doesn't feel so chaotic and disjointed. And even after school, kind of some of the routines and bedtimes, just so that there's some predictability. Everything is very structured so that there isn't always that constant kind of chaos of what's to come, which can be hard in the summer when it's still bright out at like 9 o'clock and you're trying to do a bedtime routine when the sun is still shining. But I think even that kind of helps start making that transition easier.
Yeah, I think a routine's key. And then we're transitioning from the summer where routine kind of was like, we sleep in, we do whatever. So how do you help your kids and just kids in general? What's your best advice to get them back on a routine?
Uh, I mean, I would advocate that practice is great. So rather than just ripping that band-aid off the first day of school, sometimes doing a couple trial runs so that you start easing into it. I think it's great this year. Like for my kids, school starts on Thursday. That Monday starts sometimes, and having to do a full week of kind of that shock to the system can be tricky. So I love that we've got a couple days to start getting the hang of it. We have a weekend to recover a little bit and then dive back into it. But I do think kind of setting the stage and kind of doing some practice runs of just this is what it's going to feel like. This is what's coming. So it isn't so jarring when it actually has to happen is huge too.
It's so helpful to the nervous system to get
Yeah.
them reset and kind of get their bodies back in the rhythm of getting
Mhm.
up in the routine. Tell us about book recommendations
Oh,
because
yes.
we love a book and
I'm a
tell us about.
huge, yeah. I think books are just a great way to open conversations, to make things relatable, to show that this is not just something that you're feeling, that there's enough people feeling this that they made a book about it. And so as both a teacher and a mom, I lean a lot on books. To do a lot of teaching and open conversations with our kids. When I was a teacher, I kind of had my lineup for the first week of school of my read alouds so that we could start talking through what are we nervous about. One of my favorite from a teacher perspective, there's a book called First Aid Jitters, and the main character is just going through all the things they're nervous about and what could go wrong and how they don't want to go back and all of this. And spoiler alert, but the twist at the end is that the main character is actually the teacher who's going back. And so I always love to lead with that one, to say like, this is like I'm nervous about this too, and this is new for me too. And so we all have some of those worries and anxiety about coming back, but we're all in this together. Another one is Wemberly Worried, which kind of same kind of thing. It shows how all the things that we could be worried about, but ways that we can kind of counteract that. And then I love, from a parent, especially having a kiddo go to kindergarten, The Kissing Hand is a classic, just in terms of kind of putting your child at ease of when you're away from, even when you're away from me as your parent, I'm always with you and we are thinking about each other and we'll see each other when you get home. So that's a great one too that I would always recommend.
And I love it because you can do a hand and you have a heart on your
I
hand.
actually have one right now. Yes. It's our 5 year old loves to put it on Chris or mine's hand as a, I'm thinking of you, you're thinking of me. Yes.
Those are things that they can take with them or they can visually see that helps kind of go, okay, mom and dad are still with me. I'm safe.
Yep.
I can do this. How do you talk to kids? What I know there's different ways in different ages about the transition because like kindergartners, you're trying to go to the school and meet the teacher and they're nervous, right? The
Mhm.
bus for the first time, perhaps. How do you
Well,
talk?
and one thing that I think is important, as an adult, is to not put off what they might be nervous about. It can be really easy to kind of just offhandedly be like, "Oh, there's nothing to be scared of," or "Oh, come on, that's not." Um, and I think it's important to like kind of validate and reassure them that like that you have every right to be nervous about that. So I think first, kind of honoring and naming and saying like, I get that, that would be really scary, is an important first step. It can be really easy to just brush it off and tell them to like get over it, you'll be fine. So sometimes just that alone I think can kind of really help them feel like, okay, they get this, I'm not in this alone, other people probably have felt this too. I think it's also, one of the things that we do at my kids' school is making sure that they know that they have people that are there, like they're safe people, that if you're upset about something, who can you go to? Who could you talk to? What could you do? Doing some of that, like prepping for if this happens, how might you handle it? So that they're not caught off guard. If they go to sit at lunch and there isn't a seat where they want to sit. If you've already kind of talked through what are some ways that you could handle that situation or how might you respond in that situation, you've planted some seeds so they're not caught in that moment. So I also think just prepping and having some of the conversations about what might happen and ways to solve it sets them up for success.
I love that because you're giving them it's empowering them so they have a plan. Like if this
Mhm.
happens, then this is my options. This is how I can handle it. And that helps their nervous system go, okay, I can handle this. I'm okay.
Mhm.
What do you find? Because I think one of the biggest things is like friendships. Like, well, I
Mhm.
don't know anybody. And what if they don't want to sit with me? How do you help students and kids with that when they have friendship scares or issues or anxiety?
Oh yeah. And that's, I think one of the biggest things starting school is what teacher you get and what friends are in your class. And that's always going to be, like and you're either thrilled or then you're going in worried because you didn't get the teacher you want or none of your friends are in your class. And, from a mom perspective, I like to lean on other situations, like remembering a time where it was like, remember when you were on that soccer team and you didn't know a single player, and then by the end of the season you had 9 new friends, and you didn't want to leave them either. And so we always kind of go in with, I don't know anyone, but referring back to times where you've done this before and it turned out okay. From a teacher perspective, one thing that I like to do as a teacher is from the get-go a lot of icebreakers and activities where you're kind of encouraging them to talk with one another, share things that they might not just bring up in a normal conversation, so that they can start to realize, like, oh, I have things in common with these people. And so the more we can get the kids from the get-go kind of talking and getting to know each other and sharing things that they like, sometimes even like team building activities where you give them a little like challenge that they have to work together and get to know each other. But I think setting them up for success that way as a teacher is great too. And just being very observant and watchful of who seems to be settling in well and who seems to be sitting alone or seems really nervous, and then finding kind of creative ways to bring them in as a helper or see if you can kind of buddy them up with someone. So I think the more you're kind of watching and aware and you can kind of team up and be a, buddy to them is important too.
How important, this is from a therapist perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, kids, your mom's a therapist. We process everything. What I want to see, what I see a deficit in, for all of us, because we didn't maybe grow up like that, is talking about how they feel
Mhm.
about going back. And people are scared because they want them to be okay, and because then it creates anxiety for us as parents. How important do you think it is to process how they feel, talk through it, name it, so they can have a safe place to have that empathy and compassion and feel seen and validated?
Yeah, tremendously important. And I think that's something that our generation, again, it wasn't something that we did. Um, and I am a firm believer in that name it to tame it. Like if you let it just sit and stew and fester, it gets bigger. If you can put it out there, and kind of talk through it with a safe person, I think that in and of itself helps it not feel so big and scary. And like kind of what I said earlier of letting them talk, and let it and not trying to belittle it or say, oh, stop, that's ridiculous. Gives them that validation of like, yeah, you're allowed to feel that way. And I think too, and this is a conversation we've been having in our home lately of, as parents, there are situations where you want to jump in and say, oh, I'll go march in there and say, we want our child to have this teacher because I know it's like what they want and it will make them feel. And I'm like, but that's not real life. Like, we're going to have situations. You're going to be asked to do mental health Monday, and that might be out of your comfort zone. Like there's going to be times where it may not play out how you thought it was going to, or you're going to have to push yourself outside your comfort zone. That's life too. So we can't avoid those things, but I think but there are people who are here to walk alongside you with it, that you can talk about it with, and we'll be here when you get home and you can vent about it afterwards. So, not avoiding problems and fears and those anxieties, but this is life, and let's figure out how to kind of tackle it all together.
Because it's skill building. It's equipping them to say, "You can handle it." And I love
Hmm.
saying that, you can handle it. You got this."
Yeah.
At the end, like, kind of empowering them to know they can. And also, I love a good role play.
Mhm.
So at our house, I'll say, okay, you're getting on the bus and you don't know how to ask that, say, hey, this is my stop. I'm making this up, but
Yeah.
whatever it is, that we role play so they know what to say. Cause
Right.
I find a lot of times they just don't know. They, of course, they're young, they've never done this before. And we do a lot of role play, like with a friend. If the friend says, hey, you can't sit here, then we say, okay, let's have some things you could say as a response to that. Uh,
Mhm.
if they're worried about a specific thing, let them get it out, process their feelings, and then you could role play.
Mhm.
And I
Absolutely.
mean by like having a demo conversation about it and then equipping them on some things they could say back.
Mhm. I
So that,
love that. Yeah.
okay, I've got something I can say back if so and so doesn't want to sit with me. And I
And
think
we do a ton of that in the classroom. I know, I think the most successful teachers are the ones that spend a lot of time modeling and doing that practice and role playing, even with classroom routines or conflict or things like that. When you set that up before it happens, it's then everything runs more smoothly when things are more predictable. So I think that's a huge one too. And I know a lot of teachers will, and kids sometimes even think it's kind of silly and fun, but being able to let's actually like kind of create a scenario and act this out and practice it and talk through how we would handle it, whether it's bathroom breaks or when someone takes the indoor recess toy that you want, like those kind of things, and how could we handle that. So I think
and
that's a great strategy at home and at school.
yes. What do you say to parents that are anxious? Because that's normal. And parents have, I mean, that's normal. You've got your kid and you've got grief because
Oh
it's
yeah.
a transition and you got all kinds of feelings going on. So what do you tell parents? What's your advice for parents?
That's a great question. I mean, it's funny because I've lived this on both sides of, especially with younger kids, when they go to school and that icky feeling if they seem nervous or upset when you drop them off. And you kind of have this whole, I've now dumped them into school. They're not in a good place. And I feel like I've let them down. I'm a terrible parent, and have always loved open lines of communication. If you send me an email and said you had a rough morning, um, I can typically, and I'll do this a lot of times with my kids, of just a heads up, this morning was rough. And I usually get a response back of, they're totally fine by that point. And I think oftentimes as parents, we forget that kind of resiliency and that it can feel way bigger and harder when we draw. And typically, once they get into a comfortable environment with their friends and all of that, there are people looking out for them. They typically settle in. It's like when you leave them with the babysitter, if you just get past the first 5 minutes, like they're going to be okay. So I think that's a big one. Is it feels really big and heavy for the parents too, um, but oftentimes, rest assured, they're probably going to settle in and come home and say it was a wonderful day. And if it wasn't, I think again having that open line of communication with the teachers, of being able to let me know so that we're prepped for it, and how can we kind of work together as a team.
I I
Yeah,
love that. I think communication is so helpful
yeah,
for you as a parent and the teacher. I
right.
mean, that helps the teacher as well. I think we don't talk about grief enough. So I think the main pillars of grief are when they go to kindergarten, middle school, high school, graduation,
Uh-huh.
college.
And you have some in college, so you've lived. Yes.
Yes. So they're big pivotal transitions. They're nervous. They're scared.
Mhm.
We're having our own experience of emotions, and I want to validate every parent out there that that's okay. Now,
Mhm.
if we're putting it on our kid, that's where we have to draw the line because it's not their job to take care of us. And it's okay. We're going to have feelings about that. It's a matter of processing, letting them out, naming them, talking to friends that are going through it
Mhm.
as well. Cause they're like, yeah, me too. Because once they get on that bus, you can let it rip. Like
Yeah.
all the tears can come out, or you drop them off at school, go for it. Don't hold it in. Cause that's the one thing I see people kind of pushing it down. Like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, no, that's natural. It's a
Yeah. We're
natural
allowed to be
emotion.
sad. Yeah.
Have you felt that way? Have you had grief in some transitions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can often catch myself a lot of times. I love the little ones. Like I am wired for the little ones. And so it's hard, I said it's that bittersweet of, it's so fun to watch your kids grow and turn into the little awesome humans that they are, while also being like, oh my gosh, I miss them little. And so especially with our youngest going to kindergarten, I mean, this is like that big, everyone keeps kind of checking in, and it's the whole like, yeah, it's a little surreal. Like, this is the last time that I'm going to send a kiddo off to kindergarten. Um, but I think too, with that, like you said, I'm allowed to feel that and be sad, and that's okay. But I'm also allowed to celebrate the person that they're becoming. I always say, like, each phase, I kind of missed the phase before, but I also am like, this one's really fun too. Even having a teenager that I thought I was going to be like, ooh, I just am not sure I can handle teenagers. It's really fun having a 15-year-old who's got a great sense of humor, and you can have adult conversations with. And so I can miss the cute 5-year-old version of him while also being really excited about the 15-year-old that he has become. So I think it's that my reassurance is it's still really fun to see what they're turning into.
I love that, and I think 2 things can be true. I love that
Mhm.
saying, and
Absolutely.
also I love an and in both. So I'm like, you
Uh-huh.
be grieving that and excited for them. Like, my
Mhm.
daughter's going to University of Oklahoma. It's 12 hours away. She's excited, I'm excited. She definitely has some nerves, and I do too. And so there's 2 things can be true. You can be excited and also have your own feelings about it, and same with her. So I think that's the beauty of these transitions and going back to school.
Mhm.
Recognizing that there are emotions involved. It's when we bypass them and feel like we're bad for having them. And I'm like,
Right.
no, you're okay. This is normal to have them, normal for your kids to have them. What other tips are helpful in a transition back to school?
One that I think is easier said than done, but is hugely important is sleep. I mean, and I think coming off of summer, it's hard because bedtimes are later, kids have been sleeping in. But in our household, typically we can tell, like, things start to go awry when our kids are lacking sleep.
Mm,
And I also think going back to school and the load of that mental load, the physical load, kids are going to be tired. So giving them opportunities to rest a little bit, giving them some grace of, like, they are going to maybe come home and be a completely different kid for a while. But I think one of the most overlooked remedies for that is make sure your kids are getting enough sleep. Um, so that's a huge tip, is think about that. How can we get a routine in place to get them to bed a little earlier and things like that? Um, Again, I think open lines of communication. We do high, low, weird in our house. Like, so whether it's at the dinner table before bed, but what was a highlight of today? What was something that felt hard or yucky? And then weird is typically something funny or weird that happened. But rather than just saying, how was your day? It gets us a little more intel and opens up a bit more. But it also, again, acknowledges, like, you don't just have to tell me the good stuff. You can tell me the bad stuff too. And we do it too. So we show that we can share about the good parts of our day and the difficult parts. And like I said, just lean on books. There's so many great books. The
mhm.
internet's awesome at just, like, Google some back to school books. But sometimes they help guide the conversation more than we could. So finding some really good books and leaning into that. Plus, it's just great to read to your kids and have that time together. So
The library offers them for free. So
yes.
that's also great resources. I like the HALT. It's the HALT.
Okay.
Hungry. I say, are you hungry? HALT means like, let's pause.
Yeah.
You hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Or maybe you're all four.
Yeah.
So we can say, oh, I'm hungry, because we can get hangry. Kids get hangry.
Hmm.
Like, do we need a snack? Are you tired? Do you need sleep? Are you feeling lonely? Because that's a lot of we don't talk about loneliness as kids very much.
Uh-huh.
You're angry about something, and that means you need to have a boundary about something, or you need to have a voice about something. And I love that acronym.
I love that. I'd never heard that before. I'm going to write it down.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And you can
Okay.
use that, and you can say, halt, okay, what are you feeling? Are you hungry? Because
Yeah.
at that age, the cues, they're not really dialed into the cues as much.
Uh-huh.
As adults, we're not dialed into
I
cues
was
as
going to say, I feel like I could use that. Like, which one is it?
which one is it? I'm tired. So that's also helpful. And I think the last thing to close out our conversation is screens. We can't get out of the
Mhm.
conversation without the conversation about screens.
Yep.
What are your recommendations on screens?
That's a great question. And it's a battle we fight in our house all the time. Each of our kids are different. We have one that we never really had to set any parameters because if a better offer presented, if kid rang the doorbell or there was, that was always the first choice, and screens were kind of like if there was nothing else. But we have another kiddo that I pretty sure would sit there glued to a screen all day long if we let them. We use a lot of the parental controls where we kind of have limits set on the actual device so that we don't have to kind of make those decisions of the turn it off now. So our kids are very familiar with this is how much time you get on this device each day. Use it how you see fit. For us, that's about like they get an hour on their iPad. Again, I know for some kids, kind of that screens right up until bed isn't always a great thing. So, kind of setting a time in the evening where we kind of turn everything off and kind of settle in rather than, falling asleep to the TV on or things like that. I think that's great too. But I think that's a kid by kid. I know there's a lot of but I think your kids, and so sometimes it can. We have ours that are very regimented, and then the other one, it's like they're not going to choose that anyway, so it's not as big of a deal.
I think that's so true. It's kid specific, age
Mm-hmm.
specific, and talking about it because we are seeing as therapists and even myself screen addiction. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's compelling. I mean, how many times do we want to check our social media or we want to watch a show? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's when does it tip over the line
Mm-hmm.
and cause more anxiety, depression? It's affecting how you see yourself and
Mm-hmm.
beliefs about yourself and your feelings. So I love a conversation around screens and the impact it has, and checking in. How did you feel after you did that?
Mm-hmm. And we've even told our kids, and it's humbling, but I'm like, you're allowed to call me out too, And there's our 5-year-old is she'll be like, "Mom, put your phone down," or and I, it can be a little like, ugh, but I think it's important too. The same thing of like, you're allowed to check me too because it can as equally fall victim to that as they can, and so opening up that line of you're allowed to tell me to that, hey mom, can you put that down for a minute, and I love that our kids are comfortable calling me out on that.
The same thing, and I don't wouldn't change it for the world because
Yeah.
they'll give us feedback that's hard to hear, and
Yeah.
also it's a growth area. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, that's feedback. Instead of getting defensive, I'm like, "Thank you for sharing with that
Yep.
me. Thank
You're
you for sharing
probably
that
right.
with me."
Yep.
And with my husband, they'll be like, "You're being an iPad kid, dad." They're teens, so this is
Yeah, I love that.
you kinda I love that. We can be
Yeah.
open and honest because that is a healthy family system.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to have those real conversations, and I wanna encourage everybody here, as hard as they can be, please just know that if they tell you things like that, they are doing it because they love you and they want more
Mm-hmm.
connection with you, and that's really what it's about, and so it's about deep connection, and during transitions, that's really helpful for them to feel like they can come tell you the truth of what they really feel without being shamed, blamed, dismissed. And that acknowledgement, like you said at the beginning, is huge. I just want to say thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you.
giving us your parent perspective and teacher perspective. You gave us so many helpful tips.
Well, thanks.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to share?
No, this was great. Thanks so much for allowing me to do this. I
Thank
still think I'll let Chris take over next time. This
you.
can be
You
fun.
did fabulous. You did amazing. And you
Thank
stepped out of
you.
your comfort zone, and that's what we're teaching
Yes.
everybody today.
We've all got to do that every now and again.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you, Kristen. Great seeing you.
Great seeing you.